In recognition of PKU Awareness Month. We're broadcasting live in recognition of PKU Awareness Month. After today, there will be 30 more days to raise awareness for PKU. I'm Charles Spaulding. I work for BioMarin Pharmaceutical. I'm part of the team that develops some of the educational content for patients and for healthcare providers. I'm joined today on our first Facebook Live event by Dr. Kendra Bjoraker. Kendra is a neuropsychologist by training, and she's going to share a lot with us today about PKU and the brain.
Thank you, Charles. I really appreciate it. I'm very honored to be here and honored to answer any questions that come through from the audience. Thank you very much.
Just a reminder to everyone that we are broadcasting live, and if you have some questions that you'd like answered, you can type those in at the bottom of your screen. We'll do our best to get to as many questions as possible. Now, this being an event that was promoted a little early, we got some questions early, so let's dive right in. I think one of the first things that comes to mind, Kendra, and this came in, I think, 2 questions earlier last week. PKU is often referred to as a diet disorder. But you say, and a lot of experts say, it's really more of a brain thing.
That's right, Charles. It's always been thought of as a diet disorder. But in the last maybe 20 years, and from research, we know that it's actually a brain issue because it affects the brain. And so when you eat a lot of protein, high in, let's say, meat, eggs, cheese, and legumes or something like that, it raises the blood fee in your blood and then goes to your brain, so it actually affects the brain.
So Kendra, I see you brought an avocado to share with us today. Another question that came in live last week was about the brain, and I joke, this is obviously your brain, that I know you well enough to know that Kendra travels everywhere she goes with 2 brains, the one in her head and her prop to tell people about PKU.
Right here. But
someone asked a question about white matter specifically in PKU. How is the white matter affected for patients that have PKU?
That's a good question, and I'm glad you're asking that. First of all, the brain is made of gray and white matter. And so in PKU, we know that there's been research which is continuing, so we don't know all the answers, but it affects the white matter, which is the covering of the axon. So the axon connects neurons, and it sends messages all around your brain. And so it's covered with a fatty substance. It looks white. That's why they call it white matter. And it connects different systems of the brain. And when Phe levels are high, it injures or corrupts or lessens the integrity of that white matter.
Kendra explained this to me a little earlier as a damaged extension cord, which I think was a really good analogy. You even brought a prop, I think, to show us that. Is that right?
I did. I brought a prop, and I often use this as a drinking straw when I teach children or adults that have heard this for the first time. It's kind of a really simplistic analogy, but I think people really understand it. So let's pretend that this is the axon, and it's connecting neurons, and it's sending this electrical information, which is very complex and changes neurotransmitters. But when Phe levels become unstable or too high in the brain, it actually starts to tear away at the white matter. And so I think of it like an electrical cord, which you already said. And sometimes it's like a lamp. And if you have a lamp and you plug in the lamp comes on sometimes, that's great. But sometimes you plug it in, it kind of spits and spatters. And that's what I'm talking about. So the processing speed of hearing something, dealing with new information, getting it into the brain, and then making sense of it based on your experience and what you have learned. It's not only auditory, it's also visual, and it's tactile as well.
I liked your example of a lamp that doesn't always turn on. Sometimes I think, I don't have PKU, but I oftentimes experience challenges that many people with PKU do as well. So I know a lot of us that have children with PKU, we may be thinking, gosh, I forgot my keys. I sometimes have slow processing speed. So what's different in someone with PKU? And I know we have some of the symptoms up here, so I'd love to show those as we talk about it.
Right, what's different in people with PKU, and we've done studies on this, so we've taken the general population and have taken people with PKU, and actually they're more pronounced in people with PKU. We can all experience these, and we often do experience these. They're affected by fatigue and other reasons.
But more often.
More often and more pronounced in those with PKU. So if you look at this, It's inability to focus, which is inattention. So the research has found that it's more of the inattention. They also have more of the behavioral and social problems. So the irritability, the mood swings up and down. Sometimes they break down and cry, the children do, for the small things that have happened to them, not the great big things. They can kind of handle that.
What are some of the symptoms that the adults may experience that could be related to high or unstable Phe levels?
Sure. I have met with many adults, and they often talk about PKU fog or fogginess, and so it's just almost like being in a fog, or one person described it as being underwater and they were trying to get up again. The working memory, sometimes PKU rage, and so they get very angry at things or irritable, but we've also seen more of the anxiety and depression as well. Those are really good questions. There are other things too, like difficulty making decisions. So everything in the brain, especially the frontal part of the brain, is about making decisions, higher order decision making, and problem solving, and planning. So planning step by step by step what you're going to do to reach a goal.
People talk a lot about executive function.
Yes.
And I was hoping you could help me to understand what executive function
Sure.
really is.
I'd love to. So getting back to the brain, the frontal system is the last to develop. And the executive functions aren't part of the brain. It's something that you learn through experience and persistence in your environment, and to some extent genetics, but they're learned over time, and it's just a group of characteristics where you have to plan, organize, higher level thinking, do step by step, being able to transition from maybe one activity to the next. Some people say that the working memory and attention are part of that.
So it's shifting focus, difficult to shift focus and come back to what you were doing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Kendra, could we talk a little bit about, I know the levels of phenylalanine in the brain are very important.
Yes.
And recently a group of experts came together and they came up with new guidelines. And I would love for you to just share a little bit more with us about what those ideal levels are to either protect your brain, or if you're an adult who's been living with PKU, how to minimize some of the symptoms you may be experiencing.
That's a good question. I'm really appreciative of that. So they met in 2014. This is a group of experts that come together. They take all of the research that has been written about PKU, so the neuroimaging, the neuropsychological data, other data as well, and they write guidelines. It's almost like a GPS system that you follow, and if you follow it, you get to where you're going more quickly. It's almost like the North Star, and they have said that the range should be between 2 and 6. And
2 and 6.
2
And I think I've also heard that
yes,
120 to 360 is the other. So depending on which clinic you may see, they could use either set of numbers.
Yes,
it's the same thing.
It's the same thing. It's just a set of different metrics. Absolutely.
I know that we have those guidelines because a number of questions did come in about them. And just a reminder to those who are watching us live, please send your questions in because we'd love to get to those. Some of the guidelines, can you walk us through them, Kendra?
Yes, we pretty much understand that starting treatment early is very important because of the brain.
Now, how early is early?
It's usually within a couple days that you get the results back that your child has inherited PKU. So starting within a week of that is what we're focused at.
So when you say start early, we're talking days after birth.
Days after birth if possible. Treating PKU for life, it used to be that children would be taken off diet or taken off about the age of 8 to 10.
I've heard that. So someone my age maybe was told, okay, you no longer need to come to clinic because your brain is fully developed. And I think what experts have learned now, and the guidelines are recommending, that's not a good idea.
It's not a good idea because we do know that it does impact the brain. Either unstable or high Phe levels do impact the brain. So start early, keep diet for life, keep your Phe levels in control, and using all the variable options that you have through your clinic is is what they said, and then restart treatment.
I'd love to dig into that one a little bit, because there are so many people who have been told that they don't need to come back to clinic, or we know that the diet's very difficult, so they may have fallen off the diet. So someone may wonder, well, gosh, if I've been off diet for a long time, can I see benefit if I come back to clinic or regain treatment?
Yes. I just wanted to bring something up because you just touched upon that. There are about 15,000 people in the U.S. with PKU, so I'm excited about this awareness month. Half of those are lost after they turn 18, and so it's very important. You can come back anytime. Please come back anytime, and it does have benefits.
It does have benefits. So you're
benefits.
saying you can see improvement.
I can see improvements.
That's fantastic to hear. Now, I know that we had chatted a little bit about practices that you use to help people better manage their PKU. And I love how you called it Dr. B's 5 E's to Managing Phe. Could you walk through it for us a little bit? I just think it's a great way.
Yeah.
And folks, take a screenshot of this and use it every day. I think that would be a really good, just a tool to kind of say, I'm going to walk through these and I'm going to make sure that I'm living my best life and managing the care of my brain.
I like that you said living your best life and living to the potential that you were born with. I really like that, and I kind of came up with these just to remember that. We need to engage. So the first E is engage. Get back into clinic, engage with the clinic, get started again. And once you do that, what happens is if you meet this really small goal, then it empowers you. People need empowerment. And then get out and join groups, join other people, connect with other people to not only encourage others, but to get encouragement yourself.
So to empower and encourage, part of that sounds like it's setting realistic goals.
Setting realistic goals. These are small steps, but the first step is to engage in clinic and then become empowered because you've done that and you've done something to live up to your own potential. Become encouraged through this, and then educate. Find out all you can about PKU through things like this, what we're doing right now, and through meetings. Educate yourself. There's numerous resources out there, and then reevaluate where you are in your journey of having PKU. Reevaluate, is it working? Is it not? What do I need to tweak?
So a question came in about, really, if you have been off diet for a long time,
Yes.
what is the benefit that you might be able to expect if you come back to care?
You can expect thinking more clearly, maybe the fog lifting, having better control of your memory. There's all sorts of things that research says that it will help if you go back and get your Phe levels under control.
So I think the guidelines that you were talking about earlier say it best, that it really is never too late.
It's never too late, which gives everyone hope. And really that's what we need is hope. And you can get back on track, you can feel benefits from that, and just be what you were supposed to be.
What you were supposed to be.
Yes.
I think one of the most important things for all of us really to remember is that you're born with one brain.
Yes.
And you want to protect your brain.
And it can't be transplanted.
Well, you bring one with you wherever you go, so you have a spare, but
I
most
do.
of us are not that fortunate.
That's right.
But I think the key here is, even if you have lost track of your best management, you really can do something to help minimize the effects of high blood Phe levels.
You can. The bottom line is you can do something. Some of the symptoms will get better, and that does bring up hope. So thank you.
There was another question that came in about really understanding those levels. Can you tell us what the range 2 to 6 or 120 to 360 really means, and how best to keep our levels within those ranges?
Well, we know that from all of the studies that there's a certain range that you can have, and it's 2 to 6. It used to be even 8 not too long ago, and so the range is becoming smaller, and the smaller the range gives the better benefits to the brain. And so that's why they've made it from 2 to 6. Now within the 2 to 6, sometimes even if you go from a 2 to a 6 down to a 4, that is instability, but it's still within that range. And we know that the development of the brain and getting those symptoms under control are best sought within that 2 to 6 range.
So would it be best to say that lower is better?
Lower is better.
And I think if I understood you correctly from an earlier chat, a 4 for one person may be very different than a 4 for someone else.
Yes, and we don't know because each brain composition is just a little bit different. So to say someone's going to have impact on their brain if they get to an 8 is different than saying that somebody else would as well. So each brain is unique, but each brain also likes an equilibrium in their brain. They don't like too many fevers, they don't like too much other things in their brain. They want it to be a good environment for their brain to be in.
Stable. So that seems to go back to that
That's
stability.
Right. Stability.
So you want to keep your Phe levels within the range of 2 to 6,
yes,
but you also want to keep them as stable as possible.
That's correct.
Any other tips you would have for us in terms of protecting our brain from higher unstable Phe levels?
Well, there's all sorts of things that you can do. First of all, the number one symptom or number one complaint I hear from people that I see with PKU is that they're very hungry. They're always hungry. So
we know the diet is difficult.
We know the diet is difficult, so always have those snacks on hand. Pre-plan, so that's one of those executive functions. So go to the store and get the ingredients, so have those on hand. And then be ready if your child or you are hungry to always have those snacks, and then you're not tempted to eat something that you shouldn't eat.
Kendra, a question came in about where to go. So if I am one of those patients, roughly 8,000 that you mentioned, live in the United States, who haven't been to a clinic in a while, where can I go and how can I find someone to help me?
That's a really good question. There are all sorts of associations. So there's PKU.com, which is a rich resource. There's also the PKU Alliance, which is very important.
I should mention that there are clinic finders on both of those websites. So PKU.com and the National PKU Alliance, npkua.org, they both have clinic finders where I think you type in your zip code, and then you can see if a clinic is close to you and which ones are closest. That's
a really good question because of one of the 5 E's, Dr. B's 5 E's, is to get engaged. So this question was very, very important. So you can get on there, type in your zip code, and it will send you to the nearest clinic.
It seems like your Dr. B's 5 E's would apply equally well to patients and those who are caring for them.
Absolutely.
I'm going to take a screenshot of this for sure and keep it in my phone for when I'm on the road talking to folks.
Thank you.
Are there any other tips that you might have for us in terms of, we know it's difficult. We know managing PKU is difficult because so much of our life is based on food, be it a wedding, be it any celebration, any holiday. Any tips you have for just making it a little bit easier to protect that brain?
Well, there are a lot of resources, like you said. The first one is all of the websites and the associations that you talked about. Having food readily available, but also recognizing or have somebody within your family recognize if the Phe levels are high or not, and getting people back on track in a very safe environment. And know that you're going to falter because this is a difficult diet to keep.
I think you mentioned it once that it may be difficult for you to recognize that you're experiencing high Phe symptoms, but the people around you often notice them.
And usually that's the way it is, where people around you will notice it. So your loved ones or your spouse or your significant other or even your children, you will recognize in them that they're irritable, moody, they're forgetting things, they're inattentive, or sometimes with the anxiety, they become obsessive compulsive, so they have to have things just right.
You know, you're describing me on a Monday morning, for sure. But what I've learned from you is that it's more so with people who are experiencing high or unstable.
Right, and I think that's where, you do engage and you become educated and you reach out, you become encouraged through other people as well who are living with this, because they have a lot of tips and there's encouragement in numbers. There's also, for children, there's many books that have been written about executive function. I would encourage you to just go online and see some of those. They're very helpful for not only those living with PKU, but also for the general population.
So your friends or maybe people you work with?
Yes.
That's great to know. A question that came in last week, someone says that they have been off diet, on and off, mostly off, since they were about 10 years old. And the question really is the damage already done?
Well, there again, we don't know based on variability of individuals. But generally speaking, a lot of the white matter, we know from studies that white matter will regenerate. But we do know that if it's been prolonged, that there are some neurocognitive issues.
But bottom line is that you can see improvement by and large.
By and large, you can see improvement once you're on. I've heard it 100%. Once they get back on track, then symptoms improve. And
I'm curious, over your extensive experience, how many PKU patients have you seen over the years?
I don't know.
We had talked, you said it was well over 200 or 300.
It was probably that as well. But I hear the same thing. I hear the same symptoms at different age levels of what their experiences are, and the parents, how they describe their children, and then when they get into junior high and high school, I also hear it in adults. So it never really changes. Those symptoms don't change. But the hope is that if you get back on track, you engage with clinic and you get on track, that those symptoms will lessen. And so that is the take-home message, that you can feel better, you can do better, you can learn better, you can remember better.
Well, I've learned a lot. I have learned a lot about where the levels should be. I've learned about Dr. B's 5 E's. And going through the guidelines really reminds me that these are things that we really just need to read and understand. We have a question from Alabama here. And the question is, can you tell me what I might expect to see if I get back to clinic?
Oh, here's what I've heard, and here's what research says, that the fogginess that you feel will lift. And so you become more clear-minded. Your memory improves. Your mood stabilizes. You don't get those real highs and lows. And I've heard just lately, a couple of days ago, that some of the anger will diminish. So that's really, those benefits affect your quality of life. They affect how you work, in the workplace. They affect how you have relationships. They affect almost everything. If you can feel better, you do better.
Dr. B, how important is that treatment for life?
Oh, it's critical. This is it right here. That's it. I'm not going to say anymore because it affects this. Treatment for life. It's all about the brain. We only have one, and we have to treat it with the utmost respect. So when the Phe levels get high, something's going on in here. We don't know everything. We're still doing research, and I want you to be rest assured that the experts in the field and all the scientists and the geneticists and everyone is working very, very hard for you. We're working hard for you so that you can regain hope. You'll go back to clinic, and this will be better, and you'll feel better, learn better, do better.
I think we know that we only have one brain, and it's very important that we do all that we can to A, protect it,
yes,
but B, know that it is never too late.
Never too late.
So if there's other questions coming out from the ether, we'd love to see them at the bottom of your screen and get to as many questions as we can in the short time that we still have available.
Yes. Thank you, Charles.
So it looks like we have heard from people all over the country. Wow. That's very impressive.
That's great.
And we did have a question come in. We should have addressed this right up front, but what does PKU stand for?
PKU, go ahead, you say it.
Phenylketonuria. Now I will say that the expert, it is a mouthful, and it's almost more of a mouthful with those new ACMG guidelines that you mentioned. It could also be called PAH deficiency.
Let's say it together.
That's phenylalanine hydroxylase deficiency. So it's almost more of a spectrum.
Yeah, it's a spectrum. So they wanted to get away from hyper-Phe and classical PKU and know that all of us are on a spectrum. Those with PKU are on a spectrum and can present with different characteristics. So they ended up calling it more of a general name than a specific name.
And regardless of where you are on that spectrum, The goal is to really throw every available option at treating your PKU. Is that correct?
That is correct. Do everything that you can to protect this so that the Phe levels don't get in there and block the tyrosine and protect this. That's absolutely correct.
Well, we'd like to thank everyone for joining us on our very first Facebook Live event. We are doing this in recognition of PKU Awareness Month, which does kick off today. So please, a reminder, do everything you can to raise awareness of PKU this month. And also, we would love to hear from you. If there's other topics that you'd like us to move forward on a live Facebook event, please let us know.
Yes.
Please give us some feedback on this event, what worked well, what you'd like to see differently. We take all that very seriously, and it will help us to provide more of what you want. As a last reminder, I think we brought it up once, but if you are looking to get back to care, please do visit pku.com or visit the National PKU Alliance at npkua.org and find a clinic near you. There is something that you can do to better manage your PKU.
Thank you, Charles, and it is all about the brain. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, everyone, and keep in mind, PKU isn't just a diet thing.
It's a brain thing.
Bye for now.
Bye.